Hello and welcome back to the Tin Barn. I'm Pragmatic Lee, and in today's video we're going to make some T-nuts for my box and pan brake. I have, of course, the 8mm bolts and T-nuts for all the existing holes in the shoes here on the brake. But what happens is, if I need to set up this side over here to do a pan brake or a fold in between two sides, I may need to, or oftentimes I'll need to move one of these down here maybe to set up a particular size. And the problem is I only have enough T-nuts to go with what's there. So if I wanted to move this foot all the way down here, I would have to shift all these bolts to get to have a T-nut for down here. So what I want to do today is make some extra T-nuts. I'm probably going to make about 7 of them. One to go in between every one of the shoes here. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then maybe an extra one, or one maybe to have down here at this end. The T-nuts for this are quite small. As I say, this is an 8mm by 1.25 thread pitch. As I say, these are fairly small. Let's go over to the workbench and I'll give you some specs on this, and then we'll go to the mill and actually start making them. Okay, here's a little drawing of our T-nut, about 4 times its size. The bottom width, or the overall width, is 550 thousandths. The height is 350 thousandths with a boss, with a 360 thousandths boss in there, meaning we've got a step of 95 thousandths on each side. Depth of that is 120 thousandths, and that will leave, of course, 230 down here. I have a piece of 5/8 inch cold roll here, or this started out as 5/8 inch square stock. I've actually carried it to the surface grinder and removed the mill scale on there, so we got a good flat surface to work with. I think the first thing we're going to do is set this up in the mill and get our 550 dimension. Right now, after surface grinding it down, we're at 610. So we got about 60 thousandths to take off one side of this. And what I'm going to do is rough it out on the milling machine. Then we'll go back to the surface grinder and grind that down to our exact 550. I have a 1/2 inch rough and end mill in the mill now. Got our workpiece mounted, and for this I want to touch off and only take about 50 thousandths. And then, like I say, we're going to carry it over to the surface grinder and get a good clean surface on that and get this down to width. So we'll just touch off here and zero out our DRO. All right, that's the full 50 thousandths in depth right there. All right, that's got that rough down, and that would probably be a good enough finish for a T-nut. But as I've said so many times in videos before, I've got the equipment. I like to use it. So we're going to turn over to the surface grinder now and bring this down to the exactly 550 thousandths thick. All right, at the surface grinder now, got our piece magged down. As I said at the beginning of the video, I had already surface ground all 4 sides to remove any mill scale. So I had a good flat surface to start with. Now I want to just touch off here, and I think what I'll do is move this back just a little bit. We're going to touch off, clean up any burrs that might be the result of the the roughing mill. Then we'll put the height gauge on here and check that and zero out our down feed, and should be able to get that within a thousandths or two, which again is way more precision than T-nuts need to be, but why not? All right, we're going to call that a good touch off. You know, I think I may look into finding me a piece of stainless steel that I can use for a base right here, so that when I'm using this on the mag chuck, it doesn't clamp down like that just did. All right, there's 0. May have to release the chuck. That's 559 thousandths. So we got 9 thousandths left to go on that. Let me clamp that down and see. Yeah, we got 9 thousandths to go. So up here on my down feed, I will zero that out. All right, I'm going to take about 2 thousandths at the time until we get close. Okay, I'm only taking a thousandths on that pass. This will be 8 thousandths right here. And the final 9 thousandths. All right, there's our width on that dimension. Let's go back over to the mill now, and we'll start making some big cuts, or a lot of removal. We need to bring this down to only 350 thousandths. So we got several passes to make over here. Okay, just like we did before, we're going to touch off now. I have the workpiece in there. This is the 550 dimension here. So we want to take this down in height to 350 thousandths, which is about 260 off of this. I'm going to stop at 245 and go back to the surface grinder just like we did before. Now, I'm not going to bore you with bringing all that down. What I'll do is, just like before, touch off, zero out the DRO, come out to one end, and take this down. I'm going to start at about 100 thousandths now. All right, we're getting ready to make our last pass now. All right, we should have that down to our rough dimension now. I'm going to take this out, deburr this first, then carry it over to the surface grinder and get it to our height. I won't carry the camera over there this time. It's the exact same thing we did before. We'll get a touch-off pass, clean-up pass. I'll use the height gauge to measure the height, determine what I need to take off, and then zero out my down feed and take off whatever remainder is. Okay, finally we got our workpiece down to size now. Proper width for our T-nuts and the proper height. What we're going to do now is cut out this step right here. This step is 95 thousandths deep and 120 thousandths down. So I'm going to start off first touching off. So there's 0. And I think I'm going to do this in maybe 2 passes. 2 passes for depth and 2 passes for width. So there's 50 thousandths down right there. Now let's see, we need to touch off. Find me a little piece of paper here. Alright, so we'll call that 0 for our depth. 0 on the Y. And as I said, that goes in 95 thousandths. That's 45 there, and let's come down. That's 120 total depth. We'll come down half of that, 60. Mill would probably do more than that, but I just want to take it easy just to tell you what I think I will do though. I think I'll go a little faster with the smaller end mill. Okay, let's come back to the beginning now. Go back to this side. And we'll come down the rest of our depth down to 120 thousandths. All right, we're going to step in. That was 40 thousandths on the Y. We want to go a total of 95 thousandths there. I'm going to go about 30 more thousandths. We're at our full depth now. The mill will probably do more than that. The milling machine and the end mill. But that's doing good right there, so I'm going to let that go at that depth. All right, we're going to step in 20 more thousandths to 90 thousandths, and I'm going to leave it at that until I do the back side and then get a measurement. All right, there's our step down on this side, and that's 2 depth, but still probably got about 5 more thousandths to go on the inside. Let me just see what that looks like compared to an existing T-nut. Looks right on the money to me. So I'm going to move around here to the back side, do the same thing there, and then I'll bring you back when we get ready to do the final. All right, I stepped in the same amount on each side, and I just took a measurements, and it says it's 370 thousandths. And I originally said 360 was the desired, but I think I'm going to go to 355. That'll give a little bit of clearance. So that's 15 more thousandths overall width. So I'm going to take about 8 thousandths off of each side. If it's a little bit small, that's fine. So I'll go back and zero out my Y again and come in about 8 thousandths. Let's come to the other side. Now just touch off again. Zero and come in our 8 thousandths on this side. One more quick check. That's still just a little bit over, but I'm afraid I may have some swarf in there. Okay, again, that's just a little bit big. I'm going to take about 4 more thousandths off of each side. And then after I do that and get this down to size, I'm going to take it back out, deburr it, of course, and then lay out for our holes. I'll not only lay out to drill our holes, but also lay out to where we're going to cut them into the individual pieces. And drill and tap the holes, that's where we'll use our thin parallels that we created in the last video. Okay, I got our workpiece deburred now, and before we go to the trouble of drilling and tapping each of these holes, let's double check it and be sure it fits in the slot. And it does, and it's plenty loose. Last thing you want is a T-nut that binds up when you're trying to slide it. So let's go over to the workbench and lay this out for our different holes. Okay, I said we'd go back to the workbench and lay out for the holes, but we're actually going to do the layout here on the mill itself. If you recall in the previous video, we made some thin parallels, and I explained in that why, but I'll show you again right quick. Let's set our workpiece in. Be sure the parallels are standing up, and I want to put it even with the edge of the jaw, just in the event we have to take it out for whatever reason. Now, the reason we needed these thin parallels, my regular parallels are 1/8 of an inch thick. We're going to drill 8 millimeter through here, and that would have struck those parallels on both sides and likely destroyed the parallels, the drill bit, and the tap if we'd even got that far. So we made some thinner ones that's got plenty of clearance in them. What we want to do before we start any layout or drilling is to find the center. We want to find this edge, and then we want to find the center on the Y. All right, kicked off. We'll zero out the x-axis right there. Now we'll come in half the width of the probe, which the probe is 200 thousandths. So we'll come in 100, of course. All right, zero out the x-axis again. Now let's come down a little bit. And now we want to touch off the center, or for the y-axis. Y0. Y1/2. In the upper right hand corner of your screen, I'm going to put a little chart that I made up. The T-nuts themselves, the original T-nut, was 600 thousandths wide. I figured the saw blade width at 30,000. So let's come over here, or I didn't figure it, I measured the saw blade to 30 thousandths. Let's come over here on the edge again. What I just put in is nothing but an old end mill ground down to a point. And that point should be right on the edge, which it is. All right. They're 600 thousandths long, each one. So I'm going to come into the first hole, should be at 300 thousandths. Now I could go ahead and put this back on the Y center and drill and tap there, but what I want to do is just use that pointer there just to make a mark. And that's going to be my sanity check. I won't go through and lay out each one of these based on what you're seeing up here in the upper right hand corner. That was first hole. Second hole is from this 300 thousandths, we want 600 thousandths for the width plus 30 thousandths for the saw blade. So we'll add 630 to each one of these numbers. So the second one is 930. If this doesn't come out right, I can always wash the Dychem off and relay out what does work. And that looks like it's going to be just right. We're making 17 nuts. I'm sorry, I must have bumped the camera. All right, we're making 17 nuts, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 holes. Now I'm going to come back to 0 on the y-axis where we found center there and lock the y-axis down. And all I'm doing, each one of these readings up here in your upper right hand corner, all I'm doing is setting the x-axis DRO on that reading. This is a 6.9 millimeter tap drill for the 8 millimeter screws. And that drill cleared the parallels all the way across. So now we're going to go with our 8 by 1.25 millimeter tap. And hope we don't break it because it's the only one I got. Anytime I'm power tapping like this, I always have my finger on the stop button just in case. Alright, by using my little spreadsheet layout for sanity marks, I put a mark at each place where to lay out each of the screws, and follow those same marks on the DRO, or follow those same readings on the DRO for each one of them. I'm going to do the same thing now. I've got another spreadsheet. I'll take this one down now. But I've got another little guide to go by to tell me where to put my first cuts. And I'm going to put the marker back in, and hopefully you can see better what's going on now. But the camera kind of slipped on me before. But we're going to make our first mark right here at 615, which is the width of the T-nut plus half the width of the saw blade, since this is the first cut. So 615, and these will be more than just a sanity check. These will be the actual marks that I use on the to cut it on the bandsaw. Now we're just going to advance 630 thousandths each time. And again, keeping an eye out that it looks reasonably centered between the holes. And it does. So I'm just going to advance 630 thousandths at each time. Okay, I think we've done about all we can do on the mill now and the surface grinder. So what we have is our saw marks now. Let's go over to the bandsaw and we'll cut these in two. Okay, one more thing we want to do before we cut them in two. I say one more thing a lot of times, don't I? Let's come over here to the little drill press and just deburr both sides of this. Just a very slight deburr. I'll run the tap back through these for the final touch. But now let's finally turn to the bandsaw and cut our individual T-nuts. Okay, I carried the T-nuts over, the separated T-nuts, carried them over to the Scotch-Brite wheel, cleaned them up good, got all the dicing off of it, and then run the tap back through them. The thin parallels we made in the last video, remember, made these out of an old edger blade, about a 70 thousandths thick. They worked excellent. Here's a little shot to show you how much clearance the tap had after it went through the T-nut rack. But it worked out real good. I'm going to remove these bolts now, and I think I'll start out placing an extra T-nut in the rail back here in between each one of the existing feet. Hope you've enjoyed this video and got a little bit out of it. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.